What is up? I'm Harbor from Extra Credit Design Club, and this is part 4 of Intro to Typeface Design. Another recap, always a recap. In part 1, we opened up Glyphs Mini, we designed our straight characters, we set our character set, we set the guides, bada bing bada boom. In part 2, we designed all the round glyphs. In part 3, we designed all the angled glyphs. And at this point, coming up to part 4, which is this video, we should know pretty much most of the tools in Glyphs Mini. However, in this video, we are going to be drawing the shoulder glyphs, and we are going to be drawing the oddballs, and we are going to be diving deep into a tool you should be familiar with if you are familiar with Adobe products, the pen tool. The pen tool in Glyphs Mini, however, is much more powerful than the pen tool in the Adobe softwares. You have a lot more control and minutia with how you manipulate points on a path. So I want to use this video not only to show you how to design these shoulder glyphs and these oddball glyphs, but also how to really utilize the pen tool in Glyphs Mini. Alright, that being said, let's hop right into it and finish out our alphabet. What we are going to do in this video is we're going to start with the N, and moving on from there, we're going to do the U, which, let's be honest, that's just an N halfway through a cartwheel. From there, we are going to hit the H, which is just a show-offy N that always raises its hand in class. And then we're going to hit the M, the R, then the F and the T are very similar, so is the J. And last but not least, we are going to hit that fateful S, first capital, then lowercase. And with that, we will have our basic alphabet down. So let's jump right into it. Let's open up this N, and as always, I'm going to open it up next to this capital H and a lowercase o. So I'm going to copy these two stems from the capital H and paste them into the N. I'm going to drag them down 200 pixels. And now, because this is a geometric sans serif, we know that we want things to be based on a square. But if I do this for the N, it's a little too wide, especially relative to the O. I want my N to be slightly thinner than my O. So, looking at my O, I have 632 pixels wide. Looking at my N, 660. It's too much, too much. So I think I might rein it in 100 pixels, maybe. We'll see that. That is 570, and that to me looks about the same proportions as what that H is. From here, I'm just going to select this stem of the N on the right and drop it down pretty low. And then, as always, I am going to make sure that I have a good amount of breathing room on either side of my character down here with the side bearings. This is where we get into the fun part, the pen tool. Now, I know that because how we've been designing so far, you'd be already jumping ahead and saying, hey, I could just select these points here, copy them, paste them into my N, manipulate them, and do things that way, and you very well could. However, in this video, in the name of education, I'm going to design the N using the pen tool so that you can understand how to go about using the pen tool, where is it different from Illustrator where you might be used to using it, and really just to set you up for in the future when you're designing beyond the geometric sans serif, you can use the pen tool just as easy as any tool in the world. Alright, let's get back into it. My N here, I've deleted the parts of my O, and I am going to go up to my pen tool right here. Or you can simply hit P on your keyboard. And I am going to just click, just single clicks, not click and drags, and I am going to draw roughly how I want this shoulder to look. Preview it. It's a masterpiece. Michelangelo, Picasso, what have you. And now I'm going to go about, moving these points to make them a little more acceptable. Bum bum, bum bum. Okay, but I have a problem. I want these points or these curves to be rounded, but they are straight. How do I go about changing them? In Glyphs Mini, if you hold Option with nothing selected, and then you click the path, Bezier handles will show up that you can manipulate freely. Alternatively, if you hold Shift and Option, adding the Shift in there, then you click a path, it will automatically generate these Bezier handles that are snapped horizontally and vertically into place, which is really what you want. So that's what I'm going to do for the rest of these curves. Holding Shift and Option, click there, click there. You can see we got an issue with this noise. I can just click and drag that handle, boom, just like that. Hold Shift, Option, click here. Again, clicking and dragging the handle, holding Shift to constrain it to horizontal and vertical. And okay, we're already looking better. Now, one thing that you might notice is that these points here, you've maybe noticed it throughout the video, are blue, whereas these points here on this circle are green. So what does that mean? It means that these blue points, the handles can be manipulated individually, independent of one another. Whereas with these green points, their handles are tied together. If one moves, the other moves. And the handle is always going to be straight as a board. I'm going to undo here. How you can go about changing these handles from these open handles or blue handles to those locked handles is with a simple double click. You double click once, they turn to green. You double click again, they turn back to blue. Now, this is important, having these handles be green and blue, because let's, for example, change these to green. Now, one thing I might want to do in Glyphs, in type design, is move a point along either handle and keep it aligned exactly. I could try and do this and then drag my point in and maintain things that way, but there's an easier way to do it. If I click my point and hold Option, I can move the point anywhere I want along the handles. It's a very valuable tool for dialing in exact, precise curves. Now, with those concepts of how to use and manipulate the pen tool, let's talk more about good practices when designing shoulder glyphs. Because this is a geometric sans serif, we already have a bunch of preconceived notions, a bunch of set rules within the genre. We want things to be as circular as possible when they are circular. So I might start designing this in with that circular nature in mind. I might look at this O and I might click this path here and see it's 316 pixels by 316 pixels. So I might get that, get this as close to that as I can. So the distance between this far point in my N here and this far point is 570. If I split that in half, what am I looking at? 250 plus another 35, 285. So let's split the difference and try and get this point on an equal distance, 285 pixels here. Right now I'm working with 256, so I need to go one forward and then 1, 2, 3, 285. If I move this point here, click there. Okay, 285. And now I want the distance top to bottom also to be 285. I'm working at 259 right there. So I want to go 260, add 10, add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm looking good. Gonna line this up here so those are aligned. And then I am just going to click and drag all of these points, and I am going to use this align to top, beep, to align the rest of these points, making sure that this outside curve, okay, 285, 285. And now I want to simply drag this point so that it lines up here. You can see with that indicating red line, and I want to have it be 72 pixels. And remember this old trick, select everything, hit our curve speed, our fit curve here, and it's looking pretty good. The uneducated type designer might think they're done there. However, you are no longer the uneducated type designer, so you ain't gonna end there. The thing that you're gonna do now is you are going to compensate, as always, when two strokes join, and take away a bit of this girth. So I am going to just zoom in here and make sure this is all nice and lined up. Okay. And I'm going to back this up maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe halfway. I'm going to zoom out, and I can see it's looking maybe a bit more extreme than I would like. So I'll go 10 pixels. Okay. Okay. This is a little bit more stylistic. This is a little bit more naturalistic. I think in this context, I'm going to go naturalistic and go here. But then you can see that something is amiss. While this still lines up, 285, 285, this leaves something to be desired, 265 and 285. So I might select this point here. I might hold Option and spacebar and just nudge it to the right, ever so slightly here. Nudging, nudging, nudging. And I can see what's happening is that this curve here is starting to look a bit more smooth. Just as an extreme example, I could have it something like this, really bumpy looking curve. I want my curve to be smooth, so I am just gonna eyeball, maybe step back, move that over, and now I'm gonna see how that is. Okay, 275 here. Let's click this if I can. 275. I'll tell you what, my eye is sharp, baby. I got that exact. So this is a nice, even, smooth curve. And now I might want to make the decision, because I did move this, and this is 275 pixels. Maybe I want to move this up 10 pixels here. I'll check it out. I'll round everything out again, and I'll see how it looks. Don't like it as much. I'm going to go back. Okay, so even though this isn't a perfect geometry here, I think that it looks better than the alternative, which is the perfect geometry. So I am going to leave it as is. So from here, the lowercase u is the easiest thing in the world. Just type it out. As always, I'm going to click in, add a component. Let's add the lowercase n, and I am just gonna bleep, bleep. That way, if I do later on decide to change the n somehow, let's say I do want to go for that more stylistic 10 pixels in, you can see that my u changes as well. And we have our u and our n. Now I'm going to show you one more trick that we haven't seen up until now that deals with components. For the lowercase h, I want this same vibe to hit, except for I want this stem to be taller. So I could just copy and paste these paths in, but then I'll have to remember, oh, if I change the shoulder here, I'll have to remember to change it on the lowercase h as well. It just is more time consuming. One thing you can do in Glyphs is, instead of using entire letters as components, you can use objects or shapes within the letters as components. And that's how we're going to construct the lowercase h. Let's jump back in. I am going to zoom into this N here. I am going to double click just this shoulder portion. Then I'm going to control click, and I am going to do make component from selection. This box will come up and I can name it shoulder. I don't know if shoulder has a U in it. I don't spell, I draw letters. And you can name this anything you want. The name is arbitrary as long as you remember it. I just don't think it can include spaces or special characters. Just name it something basic. Shoulder with no U, whether that's correct or not. So now you can see what happens is I have a new glyph created here called shoulder. And if I go back to my main window here, I have down here the shoulder glyph. Now, let's say when I'm exporting my font, I don't want my shoulder to export. I have that option. If I look just to the left here, this little button export is ticked. I want to untick it, and then you can see I have this little like, nope, don't go there, not allowed button or badge here, this little red mark up in the top right corner. That means that this glyph in particular will not be exported, which, perfect, that's what we want. Hopping back in to my editing window, you can see that if I manipulate the shoulder, it manipulates, oh, wait a second, that looks pretty cool. I might save that for later, screenshot it. You may have seen the birth of a typeface. Where was I? If I manipulate this shoulder, it manipulates the shoulder within each component. So now, as you might guess, I can go to my H here. I can add a component. First, I'm going to add a lowercase l, and then control click adding. I am going to add in the shoulder. Now, I have a problem here. If I'm clicking and dragging these, nothing is happening. I can widen them, which I don't want, and that's because I need to disable automatic alignment. Easy to do, just have selected the component you would like to disable and control click it, disable automatic alignment. Now, making sure I hold shift as to not move it up or down, I can drag it over, and I want it to align just ever so perfectly. Okay, very nice. Now you can see that I can just simply copy and paste this little stem of the N, and I have an H. Next thing to do from there is the M and the R. In the same way that the shoulder should reference but not be an exact copy of the curvature of the O, so should be the case in the shoulder of the M relative to the shoulder of the N. I'm going to click into the M. I am going to control click, add a component. I'll add the N. I'll control click and decompose the N in its entirety, and then the shoulder. And I will simply click these points here, and I think I'm going to bring them in, just compress this M, maybe 10, 20, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. I'll try 60 units. And then I'll grab these top ones and bring them over 30 to compensate. Select everything, have my curves match. I can see that this is looking a little bit too tall, so I'm going to bring this up 1, 2, 3. Select everything again, fit my curves, and okay, that's looking pretty good. I like how that's looking. Now let me copy and paste this shoulder, move it over until I am nice, perfectly aligned here, and zooming out, seeing it in context, I think the M looks good next to all the other letters. The overall width of the M looks good. For the R, I think I'm going to use the M, because when you are designing the R, the main thing you're trying to balance is consistency of the shape of the shoulder and minimizing the negative space under the R. One of the most annoying things to deal with as a type designer is this negative space under the lowercase r. I think I might bring this in maybe another 10 pixels. Okay, I could pull that off. I might even drop these down 10 pixels. Okay, still looking pretty normal. I'm gonna fit my curves as always. Okay, I'm gonna add in, I might even add in a little bit of a stroke here towards the end. Bring it up. I gotta align it if I want to really analyze what I'm doing with my life. Okay, if I'm zooming out, all right, that R to me looks pretty good. This is looking a bit narrow, so I think I'm gonna click these handles and just like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the right, and then 5 to the left. Just cheat this. I know that it speeds up the curve a little bit. However, because this curve is a lot taller than it is wide, I think we'll be able to get away with that. I think that's a little bit extreme. Bring that up just a hair. And okay, for what it is, I am happy with this R for now. All right, moving on from here, we have our last set of lowercase glyphs before we get to the tricky one. I'll talk about the S, and we have F, J, and the T. The first one I'm going to design is the F because I find it to be the most tricky. Like I said, I always kind of like to start tricky and end on an easy note, except for the lowercase s. Jumping into this F, we can start it off by adding some components we already know we want to use. So I can here, I'll do my little N. Oop. I'll still this little part here. I'll add in a crossbar, and I want this crossbar, to echo the other crossbars. So right now it's 75 units tall. So I want that to be 72, and that's looking good. One thing I'm gonna do is bump these up just so they're not intersecting this path. And then I am going to do the same thing that I did with my shoulder in the N. I'm going to get my pen tool and just roughly draw out kind of what I'm looking for here. And I got some options with my F. Right? I can either have it curve over entirely, like as an example, my capital J, full half bend, or I could do a quarter bend. I'll start with the half, see what the vibe is, and then go from there. So I'm going to drop this back down. And I know that from here to the top of my overshoot is 216 pixels. So I want this to be not only 216 pixels tall, but 216 pixels wide. Right now it's 143. So I'm going to add 1, 2, 3, 246. Then I'm going to add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, select everything. Fit my curves. This right here, 216, 216. That's looking good. Dare I add 216, 216 to this? If I'm being honest, I don't know if it's going to work. It might be crazy. I'll drop it down a little lower, just like this. And I'll see how this is looking. Making sure these points are straight. I want to align these 2 points. And I might go about just massaging, seeing if I can get these to look good. Right now, these are 84 pixels across. I want to change that to just 80 so it can match my other things. And I will see what I'm working with here. 137. I'll drop that down to 140 just to make it something even. And then that's 189. I'll go, boom, something like that. Select everything, fit my curve. I can see that this top bump is a little bit wonky. So I want to select this point here, double click it so that it's a green point. So if I hold Alt, I can move it along. And I am going to hold spacebar and Option and just arrow over slightly until I think that that curve looks smooth. And that to me looks pretty good. Let's see what this distance is. 83. I'm a wild man. Okay, selecting everything again here. Oh, again, this curve right here, you can tell. Ugly, ugly curve with that selected. Holding Option, I'm just gonna nudge it until it's looking smoother. It's looking smoother there, but I still don't love it. You know what, for this, I'm not loving it. I am going to click this handle, hit delete, click this handle, hit delete, and I am going to go for a straight F. Now because this has a straight top, I know I can drop this down. My 16 pixels, match it up with my ascender height, back it up about 16 pixels, select everything, round it off, bada bing, bada boom, that's 200, 203, 1, 2, 3, looking good. Select everything here, fit my curves, and okay, that to me is going to be a good F. Ideally, I got to figure out, how wide I still want to make it. Maybe I want it to be something short like this. Maybe not. Maybe I do want it to be a little bit wider, and I want the crossbar to go out a little bit further. Okay, that's looking good. There's one thing in life that I'm constantly going back and forth between, and that is a tall X height and the relationship of the lowercase f. I love how every other letter looks with a tall X height, except for the lowercase f. It just looks uptight. Ideally, this crossbar should hit right at the X height. But, I don't know. This is where you might need to make a decision. Are you cool with the uptightness? Maybe that's a vibe. Maybe you want to drop it down lower. Break a rule. The crossbar's not on the X height. A rule breaker over here. Just 'cause. You decide. I think for now, I'm going to break the rule. Drop this down just a hair. And, okay. Look at this F in the context of my other type. I'm going to go 20 here. Maybe 20 there for the side bearings. Type a little word. Funny. Okay. That to me, I think is looking appropriate. It's a skinnier character, but I think that's okay. If I have the F, the J, the T, the S, all lowercase, be skinnier, maybe even the Z, I think there'll be enough skinny characters that it's going to be a vibe. Super simple. To get my T, I am just going to select this F, copy it, paste it into the T, and then flip it upside down. I am going to drop the top of this T so that it's halfway in between the X height and the cap height, just to start with. Then I'm going to move the crossbar up to the X height here. Previewing it. Okay, I think I can move that T up just a little bit more. 20 more pixels seems appropriate to me. I'm going to move in this crossbar just a hair. Okay, that seems to me to be an appropriate little T. Now, as you may have guessed, I'm just going to copy this part of the T into the J. I'm going to flip it, select everything, drop it down, drop this down to the X height, and then I am going to get my little eye that we haven't seen in so long. I'm going to get the jot here, jot, tittle, what have you, put that above my J, making sure it's lined up, 17 pixels off. Okay, now we are lined up, we're looking good. This is also a topic of debate. For the jot above the I and the J, some say that visually it doesn't look centered when it really is centered. Some people prefer to put it slightly off center, one way or the other. Again, that's a choice you can make. I personally center for most of my typefaces, and especially a geometric sans serif. I'm going to compensate here. For the first time, I think I'm going to dip into the negative values. Because the J is on the descender, I think I can afford going like negative 50 or more even. Goodness gracious. Okay. Yeah, sure. Okay, it doesn't matter. I'm not getting nitpicky with spacing for now. And that is my set of lowercase characters. We're gonna get into the S. In my opinion, one of the most difficult letters to draw is the lowercase s, so much so that I break my rules of ending easy and I draw it last. I am going to start with the capital S and then the lowercase. I'm going to drop it down here. Normally, I would say that your S, like every other character, should relate to the width of your H. However, this being a geometric sans serif, I need to make a decision. Is it more important to have a uniform width to my characters or to be strictly geometric? I think with the lowercase j, f, and t, I've kind of made the decision already that it's more important to be more geometric, seeing how those characters I kept pretty narrow. That being said, how I'm going to go about drawing this S is I am going to be more geometric and use circles for the top and bottom portions, connecting them in the center. For my S, I know that from the top of the overshoot to the bottom of the overshoot here, I am going to be working with 832 pixels. So I'm going to cut that in half, and I'm going to go starting with 416 pixels tall for my circles here. I'm going to go about creating these in the same way I created my lowercase and capital O's. I'm just going to do it a lot faster here because it's something that we've already been through. This will just serve as a refresher. I'm going to get my primitive circle tool, and I am going to go 416 by 416. I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to drag this to the bottom of my overshoot, just like so. I'm going to copy and paste this path. I'm going to go up to Filter and offset the curve. I am going to use, because this is a capital, the values of right here, 82 and 74, and I'm going to offset. I'm going to select everything, Command-Shift-R, so I have my original circle, and make sure that my curves are fit and it is nice and circular. Now I'm going to copy and paste that and simply bring it up to match the top of my overshoot here. Now you can see that because I made these circles exactly half, they do not cross in the center here, which, okay, I can afford to make them a little bit wider. I don't want to go too much, but just a little bit. Let's say I'll bump this up. Okay, right here, just 10 pixels. Oh, didn't want to click and drag. Okay, so I expanded this circle out 20 pixels, and I am just going to copy and paste it to my bottom here, aligning it with the overshoot. I think I am going to start with this shape. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select all of these points in the center. I'm going to hold Option and delete and get rid of them. So now what I'm working with is the top and bottom of my S all opened up. Now, if you know anything about type design, then you know that the bottom of the S should be slightly wider and larger than the top of the S. It's the same principle with the lowercase x. The top part of it is smaller, more narrow than the bottom part, so that visually it's balanced out. With that in mind, I'm going to select these points, and I might just move them 10 pixels out and 10 pixels up. 10 pixels out, 10 pixels up. Select everything again, fit the curve again. Okay, you can see they are slightly wider, but nothing crazy. I'm now going to get my pen tool and connect these two paths and these two paths, and then finally this path to this path and this path to this path. If I hold shift, I have a semblance of an S. However, the spine is looking rigid, dude. Military S, straight back, no curvature to that spine. Boy, I don't want that. So, as we learned, I'm going to hold Option and click these two paths. And I am going to hold Shift as I drag these handles and just approximate how I might want this to look. Okay, you can see it's already looking better. Now we got a few options when it comes to the spine. We could have something like this, which is more of a gradually curving spine, or we could have something like this, where we want our spine to be more horizontal. This is a choice that you're going to have to make. How you can criteriarize, which is a word I just made up, criteriarize the decision making, is a more horizontal spine to an S will give your typeface a stronger horizontal presence, whereas if you have a more, vertical type of S, it will give your typeface a stronger vertical presence. The less horizontal S is more traditional. The more horizontal S is a more contemporary American sans serif type of vibe. So, decide what you want. What directionality do you want your typeface to ooze? Do you want it to be an American contemporary typeface? Do you want it to be a more traditional typeface? The spine of the S says so much. In this case, I kind of like how this curve is just playing around with it. So I think I'm going to echo that. And for that, I'm going to look at this outside curve first. So I'm going to look at this outside here. I need to drop it down to be something about like that. And then, you know what? Let's see here. I have 259. I might as well just make it 260. And what do I have here? 231. Let's make that 240. Okay. What's the difference between these two pixels? 55. What about here? 64. Okay. So maybe I can afford to drop this one down even further. All right. And now, because to my eye these curves look fairly smooth, I am just going to bring out my measurement tool and see what's what. Okay, that's about 72, 73 pixels. What about here? That's about the same. Okay, we're looking good here. That is 82 it gets into. So you can go about just kind of massaging these points here. One way that you can test to see if your S is balanced and good, with your eye looking at it, it seems balanced. One thing I always like to do for a bit of a laugh is, oh, goodness gracious, ruin the joke, is with everything selected, flip it horizontally and vertically, and you can see now, oh yeah, that looks pretty wonky. Okay, that's wild. Now you can see that definitely it's unbalanced. So, flipping it back forwards, okay, it looks balanced. And you can do it upside down and see, okay, does the weight look consistent? To my eye, it looks pretty consistent, pretty good. I might just give it a little bit of something here. I might drop this point down, what have you. Anyways, it gets to a point where you're happy with it. And now one thing that you might do for a final touch, or maybe you will do it during the design process, more likely if you have a strong horizontal spine, you want to add inflection points. To explain inflection points, real fast, I am going to drop into Photoshop. I have my curve here. Normally you want points on the extremas, right? As furthest to the north, east, south, and west as you can get the points. And then you want always parallel handles. However, there is something that's unique with inflection points, and that is when a curve changes its curve direction. So right here you can see it's curving this way, and then it switches to curving the other way. So what you want to do for best practices is add an inflection point where your curves change, and have your handles be not parallel in the cardinal directions, but parallel to the point of inflection. Luckily, in Glyphs, it's super easy to do. You can just hit P, and if you hover over a path with your pen tool active, you can click once, and it will automatically calculate that inflection point. Now, to turn it lowercase, as always, I'm just going to select it, drop it in here. I am going to compensate for my points, moving those in and in. And you know what? Measuring there, 73. I think that this spine's a little too narrow, so I am just going to give it a little bit of a width. Okay, that does look better. And 1, 2 points in, 2 points in, 2 points down. Now you can see that I'm at 72 and I am at 80 there, and I'm set to drop everything. Let me delete my inflection points for a sec. Drop everything 200 pixels. Now my S is looking ugly. I'm gonna have to do some adjusting. I dropped it 200, so I'm gonna go like maybe 40 points there. We'll go 40 points there as well, and then I'll boop in each one of these sides, maybe 20 points. And then I'll select everything, fit my curve, see how that's looking. Okay, that's looking pretty good. I am definitely going to have to make these spines match the best I can. So drop that down. This outside is looking alright, but I know it's not. Drop that down. I'm going to have to bump these up even more. Bump that down even more. Make it even more narrow. Okay. Select everything every now and again. Fit my curves. Alright, we're looking a little bit better here. I definitely am a little too skinny there. Okay. I'm liking how this top is looking. I would like my bottom to match. So what am I looking at here? Okay. 196. How did I get so crazy? Yep. Now I'm going to double click these, make these green paths. I'm going to select them, holding Option and Spacebar and Shift. I'm just going to bump them up until, okay, that looks a little bit better. Same here. Option, Shift, Spacebar, bump them down. I think I'm a little too extreme now. I'm just trying to match this spine here. Alright. Okay, that looks good. Alright, that is about where I want to be. So right here, I just need to do little micro adjustments. I can see that this curve here is not consistent. Once it hits this point, it gets a lot more shallow here in this curvature. So I'm going to hold this point, holding Option. I'm just going to down arrow. Okay, that looks a little better. So I'm going to need to drop this down as well, making sure those are staying aligned. And I am going to drop that down, bump that up. Okay, and just bit by bit, just point by point, I'll go about manipulating this S. And you know what? I'm standing back, I'm flipping this, flipping that. Okay, that still looks pretty good. What if I just... Oh, that might be a game changer. Okay. Flip it back here. All right. So I think that I got these to be a little bit too much. Back that off just a bit. And I'm just adjusting these points just bit by bit. Now I might take out my measuring tool every now and again. 72 points there. Okay, that's 71, so I need a little bit more. Okay. All right. So this S is something that I'm somewhat happy with. Looking at it now, I can see that this curve is definitely a lot wider than it is tall. Here and here. Hey, I said a lot, but it's not a lot. Okay, I might just bump those in 5 pixels, maybe 5 pixels here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, that's getting things a little bit better even still. Alright, and I'm just making these little adjustments, just moving these middle points to get the spine where I want it to be. And then once I get it where I like, then I add the inflection points, and I can just change microscopically. So, like I said, we want your inflection to be parallel, so I can see that I need to just ding, ding, move them ever so slightly here. Okay, so that is a better curve. Where's my inflections looking like here? Okay, moving that down, 1, 2, 3. Okay, that looks better. Awesome. So there we have it, our S's. I wish there was a more systematic way to go about it, but as far as I know, just milking the mouse on the S is the ticket to success. And those are our letters. I can see right away where the personality of this typeface is. That capital and lowercase w, real unique situation for the geometric sans. I can see the terminals of the C's and the E's and the G. I can see some things I'm not quite sold on. The K, the capital K, looks a little more narrow than the lowercase k, and maybe too narrow for the typeface. I think I would like the Z's possibly to match the narrow nature of the S's. At this point is a good point to take a little bit of a step back and examine the choices you've made as a whole and adjust accordingly. One thing I like to do is just type in stuff. So I'll type in Harbor is the best designer ever. Okay. And at this point, I'm not concerned with things like spacing here. If I see something, okay, then I'll change it just right on the fly. But the main thing I'm looking for is like, how does this narrow S here fit in with the circular E? Is this V too wide? Is this R look normal? If I want to see how my Z's look, you know, I'll type in something about puzzles are so fun. And I will just go about seeing the relationships of the letters. There you have it, the termination of part 4. You have a full basic alphabet. Moving on into part 5, we are going to talk about the numbers. After that, we're going to talk about punctuation. Then we are going to talk about kind of the fit and finish of the typeface and spacing, and that should be that.